It is election season in India, and a significant number of civil servants have jumped into the electoral fray. A lot of them resigning from the IAS or IPS just before the election and joining a political party. And this has given us a window in Yes Mantriji to look at this phenomenon of civil servants joining politics, how it started, and the questions of conflict of interest and of propriety that this phenomenon raises. Now, let's quickly go over a few of the prominent names of IAS or IPS officers who are fighting in the upcoming Punjab and Uttar Pradesh elections. Just a few days ago, a 1985 batch IAS officer, Jagmohan Singh Raju, took a voluntary retirement from service, that is VRS, and the VRS was accepted immediately. VRS ordinarily can take up to 3 months to be accepted by the government, but in cases where there is a political issue involved, it's often done overnight. And in Raju's case, it was accepted immediately, and he joined the BJP, and he is now going to contest in the upcoming election from Ludhiana against Navjot Singh Sidhu. We also have 1991 batch IAS officer Sacharam Ladhar, who had retired in 2020 from the IAS, who is now fighting from the Gill Assembly segment. The thing to note about him is that throughout his career, Ladhar never really came on central deputation. That is, he served his entire career in the state of Punjab. And that is where, this politicization of civil services is actually much starker than in the center. Why? Simply because of the amount of time civil servants spend in their respective states as opposed to the center. At any given point, you have about more than 70% officers serving in their states and not the center. So logically, they are way more embedded in states politics than in the central politics. Now, who is fighting against Ladhar from the Congress party? It is Kuldeep Singh Vaid, who is again an IAS officer, had resigned from the service in 2017 and is now contesting from the Gill constituency against Sacharam Ladhar. Now, Vaid was, to be noted, an officer of the provincial civil service, that is the provincial service of the Punjab state, and was promoted to the IAS. So again, someone who was very embedded in state politics. There is also fighting in the Punjab election, Iqbal Singh Lalputa. He retired from service in 2012, joined the BJP, and he currently heads the National Minority Commission. He will be contesting the election from Ropar. Now, incidentally, the chairperson of the National Commission for Scheduled Castes as well, Vijay Sampla, he is also fighting the Punjab election on a BJP ticket. He's got a ticket from Phagwara. So we have a situation where the chairpersons of the National Minority Commission, which is a statutory body, and the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, which is a constitutional body, both these chairpersons, sitting chairpersons, are fighting an election on a BJP ticket. Now, let's come to Uttar Pradesh. The biggest story here is, of course, of IPS officer, now former IPS officer Asim Arun. He was the sitting police commissioner of Kanpur. He resigned from service the day the Election Commission of India announced polls, and then within a week his VRS was accepted and he joined the BJP, and he is now going to fight the election on a BJP ticket. Then we of course have the case of Mr. A.K. Sharma, who is, as a lot of us would know, a close confidant of Prime Minister Modi since his CM days in Gujarat. He has also served as a senior officer in the PMO. He took VRS from the government in 2021 and was immediately inducted in the BJP, and then also went on to become the BJP unit in Uttar Pradesh, its vice president. Then we have Ram Bahadur, who was once considered the right-hand man of BSP chief Mayawati. He even joined the BSP in 2017, fought the election but lost. Now Ram Bahadur has joined the BJP. He is also an officer of the provincial civil service of Uttar Pradesh and someone who was promoted to the IAS. So this theme of kind of being embedded in state politics continues to be crucial when it comes to officers taking that political leap. We also have Uttar Pradesh, a former Uttar Pradesh DGP, Director General of Police, Brijlal, who once again was someone considered close to Mayawati, but then joined the BJP. Now, we have looked at the states of Uttar Pradesh and Punjab because elections are coming up in these states. But even in other states, this phenomenon of civil servants joining politics, not only joining politics, but quitting service and immediately sort of joining a political party is quite rampant. If you see, for instance, IPS officer K. Annamalai quit the service in 2021 and was immediately inducted in the BJP, and he subsequently went on to become the BJP Tamil Nadu state unit's president. A steep elevation for any sort of politician. Regular politicians have to slog for years to kind of get this position. But so a steep elevation for Annamalai. In Karnataka, you have the example of Sasikant Senthil, who resigned from service in 2020. He resigned on account of what he called growing authoritarianism in India under the BJP-led government at the center, and he joined the Congress party. In several states, you see this phenomenon at play. The list is too long to name, but you can see in Odisha, in Kerala, in Maharashtra. In all these states, this phenomenon is quite rampant. It is a pan-India phenomenon. If you see even at the central government, and the keen observers among you would have already noticed, there is a large number of civil servants serving as ministers in the Modi government. Of course, the face of this phenomenon in the central government is S. Jaishankar, because he is the Minister of External Affairs. Of course, someone who served as a foreign secretary under the Modi government was immediately then inducted into the cabinet as the foreign minister. We also have Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, again a former diplomat like S. Jaishankar, serving as the Petroleum and Urban Affairs Minister. You have Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, Railway Minister, a former IAS officer, a technocrat in that sense, roped in by the government in its cabinet. You have R.K. Singh, former IAS officer, former Home Secretary, who served as the Home Secretary under the UPA 2 government, joined the BJP in 2014 before the elections. He is now serving as the Power Minister. You also have R.P. Singh. He is JDU's national president, a close confidant of Nitish Kumar, serving as the Steel Minister in this government. We have at least two more IAS officers, Arjun Ram Meghwal and Som Prakash, who are serving as junior ministers in the Modi government. But by and large, these are the more prominent names of former civil servants roped in as ministers in this government. So as you can see, that the trend has of course always been there, but in the central government, when former civil servants get such meaty ministries, get such prominent roles, that phenomenon is kind of new. And when we speak to officers, they tell us that while it has always happened, and it's happened a lot more at the state level, but when it happens in such prominent positions at the central level, the signaling is very strong and the message is quite clear that political opportunities do lie ahead for officers. Now, some of this in the central government can of course be explained by the fact that the BJP has been in the opposition for so many years. So it needs people who are more acquainted with the nuances of governance, and that's why more and more civil servants are recruited by this government. But the impression most definitely is that the trend has become stronger. Having said that, as I mentioned, this is not an entirely new phenomenon. It has several historical precedences. And we can start with as early as Subhas Chandra Bose, also because he's in news these days. But a lot of you would know that Subhas Chandra Bose was an officer of the Imperial Civil Service, the predecessor of the IAS under the colonial government. Although he was only a probationer, but in 1921 he resigned from the service. In fact, his resignation letter a few days ago went viral on Twitter. He resigned in 1921 and then went on to join the Indian National Congress. Then we have the case of someone called K.K. Nair or K.K. Nair. He was the district magistrate of Faizabad in 1949, and he was the DM most crucially on the intervening night of 22nd and 23rd December 1949, when an idol of Lord Ram mysteriously appeared at the disputed site of the Babri Masjid. Now, of course, we know that this moment was the beginning of the politically fraught Ayodhya movement in the country. But it has been argued and it has been reported that Nayyar was asked by his seniors in the government, the then Chief Secretary and Inspector General of Police, to get the idols removed from the disputed site in order to quell tensions in the district. But Nayyar sort of overruled his seniors and argued that if he does that, if he gives these orders, there could be riots in the district. So he overruled his seniors, and almost 3 decades later, in 1976, Nayyar was given a Lok Sabha ticket by the Bharatiya Janata Sangh, the predecessor of the BJP, and he was elected as an MP from Bahraich. We have several other examples from more recent history. Yashwant Sinha, in some sense, can be called a trailblazer in this respect. He resigned from the IAS in 1980 and joined the Janata Party. There are several other examples. I can read out a few names: Meera Kumar, Ajit Jogi, MS Gill, Pawan Verma, Natwar Singh, P.R. Narayan, P.L. Punya, N.K. Singh, Brijesh Mishra. The list of these officers who kind of took the political plunge is long across political parties. These are officers of all IAS, IPS and IFS, that is Indian Foreign Service. And we can broadly argue the trend has been that while IPS officers mostly join state politics, IPS officers, remember I have said in an earlier episode as well, are the most sort of embedded in state politics. So IPS officers take to state politics by and large. IAS mixed bag, they take to both central and state politics. Indian Foreign Service officers, diplomats, mostly are directly elevated into national politics because they are the ones who more than anyone else are seen as technocrats in that sense. But remember, these are the biggest names, these are the most prominent names which get national headlines and national attention. But as I mentioned, the enmeshment of politics and civil services is the most pronounced at the state level, where a lot of times civil servants who have left their job, who have left the service, have to give up, their safe and secure careers and really start from the scratch, compete with politicians who have been in the party for decades before them, and sort of slog to rise up the hierarchical ladder within the party.
Some of you would remember the case of Raipur DM O.P. Chaudhary,
who had resigned from the IAS right before the 2019 elections. He got a dream start into national politics in a sense because we had Amit Shah sort of campaign for him across the district, but he lost the election and in a sense has lost out on both fronts, has lost out his job in the civil services and does not have the kind of political career that he would have imagined. Finally, let's now come to what government rules say about civil servants joining politics. Very plainly put, nothing. Government rules actually say nothing about civil servants joining politics. While there is a prohibition on civil servants taking up private jobs after their retirement, there is a prohibition of 1 year. There is a cooling off period of 1 year before they can take up private employment. And also that too in cases where there is no conflict of interest. But there is no such regulation for officers who want to take the political plunge, not even those who resign just before election from their service and join political parties. In 2012, the Election Commission of India recommended to the government that if nothing else, there should at least be a cooling off period of 2 years for officers who want to join politics. But the then Congress government turned down the proposal, saying that it would be an infringement on the right of citizens to contest elections in a democracy. So the proposal was dropped. Now, the murkiness of this kind of enmeshment of civil services and politics is perhaps the most telling, and I will end with this, the most telling in the case of former Bihar DGP Gupteshwar Pandey. Now, Gupteshwar Pandey in 2009 took VRS from service to join the BJP. He was hoping to get a ticket from Buxar in the national elections. That did not happen. He did not get a ticket. And what happened next? Pandey was re-inducted into the IPS. Almost 10 years down the line, he went on to become the Director General Police of Bihar, the highest rank a police officer can have in a state. In 2020, just before his retirement and just before the Bihar Assembly elections, which were due in October, he resigned from service again. He took voluntary retirement from service, which was accepted immediately in September. He was hoping to get this time a JDU ticket, which again did not happen. So Gupteshwar Pandey after that has said, by the way, that he is going to serve no one else but God now, no other party, no other government. But how an IPS officer, serving IPS officer, takes voluntary retirement, joins politics, comes back into the service when his political stint is unsuccessful, goes on to become a DGP of the state, so on, is something that legal commentators should be commenting upon. But thank you so much for watching. I will be back with another episode of Yes Mantriji. Until then, do subscribe to the Print YouTube channel.